Hey there, algebra students. Wanted to give you a little bit of help on this week's assignment. There's one new topic on how to solve square root equations or radical equations. They're actually really simple. You have all of the necessary algebra skills to do these. There's just one step and one extra step that you need to learn about, which I'll show you in this video. So over on the right, I've outlined how you should solve a radical equation. You get the radical by itself, so the square root piece. If it's not by itself on one side of the equation, you move things around to get it by itself. And then here's the new step, step number 2 here. You square both sides. So for this equation, since the square root is already by itself, we're going to go to the left-hand side. And just for emphasis, I'll put a set of parentheses. We're going to square that side. And if I do that on the left-hand side of the equation, I have to do the same thing on the right. So I'm going to square the right-hand side. So what happens here, on the left-hand side, we have a square root, and then we're squaring, but those are inverse operations. They undo each other. So the left side is just x squared plus 6x plus 3. Now be careful on the right-hand side. Please don't make that common algebra mistake. 3x plus 1, quantity squared, is not 9x squared plus 1. 3x plus 1, quantity squared, means 3x plus 1 times 3x plus 1. So make sure you use the distributive property when you multiply. When you multiply that out, draw the arrows if you like. We'll have 4 arrows here. So now this equation is x squared plus 6x plus 3 equals, let's see, 3x times 3x is 9x squared. And then we have 3x times 1, and then another 3x times 1. So that's plus 3x is plus 6x. And then 1 times 1 is 1. So step 3 says solve. And here's where you really should just pause the video or close the video, because this is a quadratic equation. You guys know how to solve quadratic equations. You're pretty good at it. So use what you already know about quadratic equations to finish solving this equation. I'll go ahead and finish it out since it's here. But let's see. If we subtract x squared from both sides, 9x squared minus x squared is 8x squared. If we subtract 6x from both sides, well, those cancel, so I don't have to write anything down. And then subtract 3 from both sides. This is 8x squared minus 2. We moved everything from the left-hand side, so that equals 0. So let's see. Add 2 to both sides. 2 equals 8x squared. Divide by 8 on both sides. Well, 2 over 8 is 1 over 4. That's x squared. And now take the square root on both sides. So don't forget, plus or minus, the square root of 1 is 1. The square root of 4 is 2. Now, I've only given you the introductory assignment for solving square root equations. You really need to test both of these solutions, positive 1/2 and negative 1/2. You have to plug those in to see if they work. So for example, if we take the solution negative 1/2, let me switch colors for testing our solutions. So if I plug negative 1/2 into that equation, it better give me a true statement. So let's see, we're going to plug in negative 1/2. So we have negative 1/2 squared plus 6 times negative 1/2 plus 3 equals 3 times negative 1/2 plus 1. So you have to ask yourself, is this a true sentence? Now, if you look very carefully at it, you may already know, but let's just work it out to see. So negative 1/2 squared is 1/4. 6 times negative 1/2 that's negative 3. Then we have plus 3. And on the right-hand side, 3 times negative 1/2, that's negative 3/2, plus 1. On the the left-hand side, we have negative 3 plus 3. Those cancel, so you have the square root of 1/4. And on the right-hand side, you have negative 3/2. That's negative 1.5 plus 1 is negative 1/2. And if you look at this equation, that equation is not true. The square root of 1/4 is a half, not negative 1/2. So what that means is, algebraically, you're supposed to take the square root on both sides, or when you do take the square root on both sides, you need the plus and minus, but that does lead to a contradiction in this particular problem. So we're going to throw out that solution. That's called an extraneous solution. And that means this equation only has one solution. Positive 1/2 is its only solution. Now what I should really do is I should do the same thing here, and I should plug in positive 1/2, but this video is already too long, and I'm sure you don't want to watch me do that. Anyway, so the main thing here is you already know how to solve these equations. Okay? The main technique is things that you know how to do with quadratics, whether that's factoring or completing the square. There's just a couple of little new things to worry about. This step of squaring both sides, and then it being mandatory that you check your solutions. Anyway, if you need some extra help, just send me an email, and I'll see what I can do. See you next time.